Hello.
Hi, Miranda.
Hi, how are you? Is this Doug?
Yes, it is.
Okay, is this connection good? I can also move upstairs if you need me to.
It sounds good enough to me. It sounds, they're always a telephone connection, so you never quite get that ideal connection that you would,
Maybe I'll go upstairs. You're starting to break up a little bit.
Okay.
I'm in the basement of my house.
All right.
Okay, so what can I do for you?
Well, anyway, I had asked President Donald Trump the other day about the problem of wild animal markets and how those may have led to this pandemic around the world. But Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions for you. One is this, that tomorrow you're going to be speaking with the G20 leaders. And I want to know if you're going to lead an effort to craft a worldwide ban on wild animal markets so as to prevent another pandemic, given that COVID-19 is a zoonotic that was transferred to humans in trade of exotic animals.
Yeah, I don't know that subject's going to come up. There is a lot of talk that's how this all happened, came out of China, and they say that's how it happened in China. So it's something maybe will be talked about, but it's not the top of my list.
Yeah, so I'm speaking with Dr. Miranda Brown. She's a professor of Chinese cultural history at the University of Michigan, and she has a special interest in Chinese medicine. And right now, considering what we're going through with COVID-19, this is a prime time to talk with her about wild animal markets and how we should approach China or other countries about such markets. Welcome, Dr. Brown.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. First of all, has China stopped wild animal markets or are they continuing?
Well, I believe that they came down very hard on it recently and banned all of it for food consumption. And that's what I understood. I mean, there was definitely illegal to consume endangered species. I mean, I was in China over the new airport, and there's a picture of a pangolin and, a stern warning to anyone who thinks of eating that there will be penalties. So, the government has made rules and laws against sort of consuming sort of endangered species. There were regulations on wildlife. From what I understand, there were, of course, issues with people sort of following laws, which is an issue everywhere. So I think that right now, though, the government is very, very clear on this sort of issue.
There had been news reports that these wild animal markets had reopened in various places. I guess that could happen in such a situation where cultural norms are what they are, and it's very difficult to get people to change their norms.
Well, it depends on where you are in the country, right? I mean, you're talking about a place that's the size of a continent, really. I can tell you that cultural norms is a very broad phrase, right? I mean, let me just give you an example. There's a place, of course, for wild game meat in the U.S. There's also foie gras, but these are foods that are sort of highly contested in the United States, right? I mean, California is constantly outlawing foie gras and then bringing it back and so forth. And so I think wild animals in China have a similar kind of role. It's not something you eat every day. I think I may have consumed it once in the many, many years, like the last 25 years. So that would be the first thing I would caution people against, sort of overgeneralizing about what people in China do or do not eat on an everyday basis. But certainly when your pangolin is coveted for, there's a history of consuming it as food and also using parts of it for medicine. Civet was definitely a sort of a highly sort of sought after exotic food historically. It's not something I've seen on menus, but certainly in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, I would bet that these things would be hard to find.
Well, and of course, I think it's very important to reemphasize that this problem is not just a Chinese problem. For instance, Europeans, there's a certain group in Cyprus, for instance, and other areas in Europe that have been hunting wild songbirds for food, and it almost eliminated some of the populations there.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you another thing, which is, Civet, which is linked or suspected to be the source of the SARS outbreak, right, from 2001, 3 or 4. I'm losing track of time after 22 days of confinement. But that is the same animal that produces high-end coffee for Westerners, right? You can buy Civet coffee on Amazon, right? And so this is the same beast, so to speak. And then there's, of course, tiger hunting, I guess, is a sort of a pastime. And there are more wild tigers in captivity in the U.S. and in the world or something like this. And so this is definitely sort of a global problem.
Yeah. And so it's a problem that, like, let's say, weapons of mass destruction that can do the same kind of damage, actually.
Yes, I would say so. So just to be sort of, to play devil's advocate for a second, wild animals, obviously, animals and human beings together can become an issue, whether they're sort of wild or domesticated, right? So swine flu, which came from North America, comes from the swine or pig, right, which is a domesticated animal. And avian flu is also dangerous. So I'm not suggesting anyone become a vegan here, far from it, but it's important to recognize that this is a problem that I think has to do with humans and animals.
Yeah, it's a problem we just have to figure out at some point how to deal with it.
Oh, yeah, definitely the management regulation issue. Some of the criticisms about the wet markets in China was that you had a lot of different species, right, in small spaces. And the next question is, once, a disease moves from an animal to a human being, what are the steps you take to contain that damage, right? Some countries have been highly successful at containing the damage, right? Other countries less so.
Well, in fact, the Obama administration had started what was called the PREDICT program, and that was to discover incipient zoonotics. Those are animal-borne diseases, so that they did not cross over into human populations. But that program, it was a USAID program, was actually eliminated by the Trump administration.
Yes, it was. Yes. And I'm hoping for better cooperation between U.S. and China on that front, too, because we're dealing with two of the world's largest sort of markets for food, right? And most powerful countries, they should be able to work together to eliminate these threats.
And I guess I would end our discussion on that issue about world markets for food. Right now, the world market in trade and so many issues has been severely mitigated. And the question becomes, is this a danger to the food supply?
Well, this is, I think, an opportunity to consider the ways we source food, right? Obviously, right now, I'm not getting a lot of bananas in my diet. But yes, I think this is an opportunity for us to look at how we're moving food across the world, where we're getting food, who has access or doesn't have access because of those global supply chains. And so that, I think, is definitely an opportunity for us to think about it, also to think about the ways in which, the destruction of rainforests and natural habitats have on sort of human disease and then further disruption of the food supply.
This is something that we should definitely continue in other conversations because it's a critical issue and there's plenty to discuss there. But I will say that it has been a pleasure to speak with you today, Dr. Brown, and I very much appreciate your time to square the circle on this conversation after my question with President Trump earlier, whether or not we should be looking at wet markets.
Well, thank you.